Yeah, Jake Swamp, we were very sad, and I'm surprised, I'm sure everyone was, to hear about Jake's passing. I had the opportunity to spend some time with him in September this fall, and just a couple weeks before he passed away. And I was listening to him talk about his vision for bringing all the tribes together to have a big ceremony, have a grief release healing ceremony in the headwaters of the Mississippi, so that it would be kind of the center of Turtle Island, if you will. I was really, that's the first thing that I thought of. At first, of course, the sadness, and then the, oh, what about Judy and his wife, and the family, and just all that stuff that comes up. And, the next thing that I thought of was straight away, what about his vision for doing that intertribal healing ceremony? And I thought, well, that's such important work. And I was at Bioneers over the weekend. There was a 4-day fire burning at my home in California, but I was a keynote at Bioneers in Central California. I had to go down there to Cal Poly. And I heard there, when I got there, that Oren Lyons, Jake's very dear friend from the Onondaga Nation, was talking about that same vision, and that he was saying we're going to see that through, and that made me feel good. But I like to tell people, you may not understand Jake Swamp's influence, but he was a very subtle, kind of understated guy when you were with him, but he was a powerhouse when it came to vision and seeing trends and seeing how things could emerge and move in the world. And I think I've heard and read on so many of the sites that people have put up for Jake, and all the emails that have been going back in the listservs, so many people said the same thing, which is, if I never met the man, they said this, he is the single most influential person I've never met in my life, and they credit it back to the Thanksgiving address. And if it wasn't the Thanksgiving address, it was Thanksgiving address and peacemaking, but it was always at least gratitude. And for the people who knew him, they said the same thing. So to me, it's an amazing thing that a single man could, without meeting tens of thousands of people, influence them in such a strong way. Because it's not, you can read somebody's book and say, that was a great book, here, read this book. But if you get a practice from somebody and then it changes your life, that's a whole different ballgame. And that's where Jake is in our movement. I mean, he contributed the Thanksgiving words to our community, but he did so much more than that. And it would be too much to go into at this time all the contributions of Jake Swamp to our work. But let's just say they're extensive. That has to do with the fact that, the Peacemaker was an architect of incredible skill. I mean, beyond skill. I guess you would just have to say, in a certain sense, the pureness of sacred vision in a way. It's like, what is the ultimate expression of creativity? When a person can really purify themselves and their minds and their hearts and their souls and become really unified with their own life's purpose, they begin to really see, strong patterns. And obviously the Peacemaker was a person of high degree in that regard. And hundreds of years ago, over 800 years ago, he's put a pattern down that wasn't just about government. Some people think, he influenced the United States government. He did a lot more than that. It wasn't just about government. It was a cultural mentoring pattern that he laid out for the people. And it was a cultural facilitation process that emerged, that fostered connection between people and people and nature, people and themselves, which of course is the mission for so many of the movement's mentoring programs, including Wilderness Awareness School. So, I think about Jake as a ambassador and educator from a lineage that understands the fine art of cultural mentoring, and it was a highly refined art. I did so much research on how beautiful a pattern was put in play, and I think a good part of my vision since 1983 is reflected in the great works of the Haudenosaunee people and their ability to regenerate an amazing culture with every generation that passes. So for us, the duct tape generation, whatever you want to call us, the people who are really struggling to pick up the pieces after hundreds and hundreds of years of unacknowledged war and destructive patterns within our own culture, we use, Kamana as an opportunity to rekindle our relationship with the natural world and build connection again as a foundation, and how important that is, And I think that Thanksgiving within Kamana is so critical. And in the beginning, I used to shy back from it because, working at a school where people weren't so sure about it, what are you doing, trying to be Indian or whatever. But I just held forth, this Thanksgiving is so important, and we modified it, of course, because that was what Jake requested of us anyway. That was the treaty that we were offered. I'll show you these principles, but you're going to need to find a way to make them your own, because we don't want you trying to be Mohawks. And we acknowledged that and said, yeah, we're definitely not going there. We'll stay in our European sailing vessel, you stay in your canoe, which is what they said to us. At that time, we just looked at what does the gratitude bring. So each and every time Jake passed through and offered gratitude words for our community, it was like a healing salve, in a tense urban, suburban environment in New Jersey where people were under a lot of stress. This man would come through and he would offer these words, and I could see it was like he calmed the sea. And then I started to recognize, he was a skilled orator with a lot of power, right? So his presence was like that. But also the practice of gratitude was having that effect on us. And so we said, hey, is it okay for us to do this? And he said, yeah, remember the peacemaking way comes from peace at the center. Peace is first. What restores peace, he asks, And in really reflecting on that question of peace and how it relates to nature connection, I've often found it easiest to explain to people around the world as I move from place to place that peace is what you get from your sit spot. Thank you, Kingfisher. Peace is what you get from your sit spot. Peace is what you get from an environment like this. I'm standing by the Snoqualmie River, and it's a foggy, cool morning. It's totally beautiful. The spider webs are just twinkling in their dew-lit, state right now, and you're just looking around at this miraculous place and feeling the power of this river going by, and you're just getting into your body, and you're feeling with your senses, and you're smelling the air, and you're feeling the coolness, and it kind of wakes you up. And what it does is it brings you to the present. And there's a state of connection that emerges that you start to recognize as this baseline feeling of, I'm here, wow, what was I so troubled about, and it's gone now. I don't even remember why I was so worried. And nature has that effect on us, So I say to people, if you really want to understand that concept of peace, it's not really a theoretical thing. It's not an ideological thing. It is this that I'm describing now. And what we all began to acknowledge was, in our discussions, was the Thanksgiving words, in whatever form they take, will get us to that place, even inside a building. And when we first started running the Monday night series at the Stonehouse bookstore on Leary Way in Redmond years ago, before it moved to Kirkland, we thought we had a room full of people who were interested in the content. We were running an art of mentoring on an ongoing weekly basis. And we come to find out in surveying people a little ways into it, they really aren't paying any attention to the content. They're there to interact with people of like mind and spirit, and they're there because having those Thanksgiving words at the beginning of the night, where people just sort of openly acknowledge their gratitude for all the things in life that matter, really makes them feel better, and that lifts up their spirits. And then they find themselves sinking through a week of work, and they can't wait till the next Monday. I thought, wow, that was really enlightening for me, to realize that, what I might have been taking for granted, some people were seeing as the spring in a desert, So I shrunk back from all that, like, I don't know if we should really stand for this Thanksgiving thing. People don't get it. They're uncomfortable with it. And then, Time magazine has an article on scientific proof that gratitude improves people's lives. And hey, it's better than that. Government agencies are now having you print out and put next to your computer something on the wall that says, these are the things, if you give thanks for, you'll be better today, and you'll be healthier and happier. It's all this research now that basically is totally underlining everything that Jake told us way back when. Of course, Jake is only, and not only, Jake was one of the proud voices of a continuous lineage that goes back thousands of years, because the Thanksgiving practice goes back to the beginning of time for those people. You know, they remember it as one of the original things in their culture. You know, if I could go back and change anything in the last 27 years, I think I would have focused more on connection from day one as opposed to awareness, because I think awareness gives us a certain almost idea about what we're doing out in nature, whereas connection just happens below words. And Thanksgiving brings us into connection with things, you know. So whatever works for you, it doesn't have to look one way or another. Bottom line is, you know, water's good for you when you're thirsty. So is Thanksgiving. You know, it's good for you. And that's the bottom line. And besides that, it was probably the single most important cultural element that we added to the Kumana program in terms of its influence on people. So if you don't understand how to do that or what it is, you know, I highly encourage you to look into it more deeply, because this Thanksgiving thing it would be sort of like saying, well, I don't do Thanksgiving. That'd be kind of like saying, I don't really drink fluids. You know, it's kind of on that scale. It isn't really about your belief system. You know, you got to drink water. You know, you got to drink fluids. Maybe you don't drink water, but you got to drink fluids that have water in them so that you'll live. And in the same way, I think Thanksgiving, if you practice it in your way, if you bring gratitude up in your mind and offer it to the universe, or offer it out just so that it enters into your consciousness, it has an effect on your being, and it has an effect on the birds. You know, it has an effect that maybe it's energetic, but you know, I'm okay with that, but some people aren't. So let's just say that even if it isn't energetic, maybe it's body language. You know, maybe when you suddenly awaken into gratitude, you start to feel peaceful, and your body language changes, and the way you are perceived by the birds changes. Because I know from hundreds of stories and personal experiences that being in that grateful state puts you into a different relationship with the animals, the plants, the birds around you in nature. And the birds treat you different. Because the birds treat you different, the deer act differently, and so on. And you can carry that into your life. The people who build that muscle in their body, that gratitude muscle, in the relationship to their sit spot, will go into their other activities in their life, you know, back into the busy workaday world, and they will become a sit spot for their coworkers. You know, people say, oh, I just like being around you because you make me feel peaceful and calm. You know, you're always in a good mood. You always have a smile on your face. You always have a nice story to tell me about something that happened this morning, and you inspire me, you know. So it's a whole lot more than just a silly list of things to think about. You know, it's a lot more than that. And you know, I just encourage it. And really, more than anything, now that Jake has passed, I feel increased deliberate commitment to wanting to make sure people understand the value of this stuff. Because I think we all think, well, when the elder's here, he'll stand for it, and we can just point to him. But now he's gone. You know, he's left us. And something that Gilbert Walkingball said to me before he left, he said, you know, John, someday I won't be here. He said, and he said, you know, the things that I share with you, he says, I don't want you saying to people, Gilbert said that this is good. You know, what I want you to realize is that it's good, and you stand for it because it is, not because I said so. You know, and that was a really important message to me as a person who's trying to pass things into the future. And I think about Jake's words in this way too. And we don't do Thanksgiving because Jake says it's good. We know it's good, but we'll still miss Jake.